Hey everybody, so I'm Gadget Guy here, and today we're taking a look at the LG G3 Vigor on AT&T. This is LG's mid-ranger version of the G3, a nice little sort of mini addition to the G lineup. And of course, since we've already taken it out of the box, we don't need to do any kind of silly unboxing video, because we just want to talk about the phone. Now, I've been a little critical of mid-rangers in the past. We're facing tremendous competition from high-end phones, and especially once you get to a flagship phone that's been out for a little while, you can usually find really good deals on them. And then we're finding increased competition at the low end, the entry level. Like, for example, we just recently reviewed the Nokia Lumia 635. And getting to spend a couple days with the G3, I was really curious to see how something like this might position itself against the high-end threat and the low-end threat. Now, going around the general hardware, this is going to be a very common build moving forward for mid-range and even upper entry-level smartphones, especially on Android. We're dealing with a 5-inch diagonal screen with a 720p resolution, which is ever so slightly bigger than what we're going to find on a phone like the Samsung Galaxy Alpha, for example. And it's a nice IPS display with decent viewing angles, and having already done the camera test on it, it's got pretty decent outdoor viewability as well. The display obviously won't be as bright as the screen that you might find on a Lumia or the iPhone 6, and it's a little difficult to see significant differences between the Vigor and the big brother G3, but in my lit studio, these look pretty similar to each other in terms of overall brightness. And in continuing the hardware tour, we of course have software controls on the Vigor. I don't think we're gonna see capacitive buttons on an LG device anytime soon. We've got a 1.8 megapixel front-facing camera, which tops out at 720p video. Nothing along the sides of the device. We do have a little break in the casing there because you can pop the back cover off. Nothing along this side of the device. Up top, we do have the IR blaster, and this makes me really happy that even their mid-ranger phone can be used as a universal remote. The bottom of the phone, we've got a micro USB port and the headphone jack. And then on the back of the phone, on all LG devices now, this is where all the magic happens. We've done a speaker test so you can hear how the speaker on the Vigor performs. And on the back here, we've got an 8 megapixel shooter with laser autofocus. And we've also done a standalone camera review so you can see how that performs. As a spoiler, it's mid-pack performance, which is not surprising considering that this is a mid-range device. But ultimately, if we were gonna pick any of the additional hardware features from the G3, while I appreciate having a better focusing system, I think I would have preferred having the optical image stabilization from the G3 camera as opposed to the laser focusing system. And popping the back cover, we've got a 2,540 milliamp hour battery. It uses micro SIMs. I'm kind of happy to see micro SIMs still around. And it can accept micro SD cards up to 64 gigabytes in size. And you'll probably want to invest in a micro SD card if you consider picking up the Vigor, but we'll get to that in just a bit. I have been very happy with the battery life on the G3 Vigor. This 2,500 milliamp hour battery does a phenomenal job of not only powering the phone all day, but again, in true LG fashion with the low power specs, it's using the Qualcomm 400 series quad core and a 720p screen. You can hypermile this phone into all day, all night, and most of the next day kind of usage, even running it with pretty moderate activity, like the number of email addresses that I have to keep track of and my social media accounts. And from this design perspective, I'm really happy to see companies like LG not punishing consumers who buy mid-range and entry-level devices. Just from a design and aesthetic standpoint, you would be really hard-pressed, I think, if someone pulled one of these phones out of their pockets to say, oh, well, that's the Vigor, you must have purchased the cheap version of the G3. No, this design language transfers really well between larger and smaller devices. And the brush texture on this backplate feels really nice in the hand. Handing this phone over to someone, they're not instantly going to think, oh, well, they got the cheap device. This is another opportunity, though, for me to show off just how far ahead of the curve the G2 was in terms of packing in a ridiculously large screen into a smaller form factor. These tiny, tiny little bezels on the 5.2-inch screen. The Qualcomm 400 is a pretty well-known entity, and performance isn't really going to wow anyone. You can make it through the basics, paging through the UI, pulling up your app drawer, doing your email, text messaging, doing some mapping, web browsing, stuff like that, with relatively few lags or stutters. If you load up too much running in the background with the multitasking, obviously you can slow this phone way down. But all in all, the target market for a device like this is one where you're trying to tackle the basics in a nicer form factor, in a nicer shell, nicer look, nicer screen, but you don't want to spend top top dollar on a premier flagship device. And I think the G3 Vigor largely succeeds in that mission. Now, one of the areas it's going to be a little frustrating for folks is that storage. I mentioned the memory card slot before. We're going to talk about the built-in storage. And considering this is an 8 GB phone, you're really only going to have access to around 4 GB of storage when you first fire this puppy up. That means that whatever price you buy this phone for, you need to factor in the cost of a memory card right from day one. Because I only have 2.3 GB of space left, and that is only from having shot the camera test reviews, short little 10 to 15 second clips of video all around town. So it's really cool that this thing shoots 1080p video, and the stills are pretty nice considering it's a 1/4 inch image sensor, but it's not gonna take much to fill up this phone really fast. And we're not even talking about getting into apps and games and stuff like that. And while I really love that the Vigor has tap to wake features and functionality, it's not quite as consistent as the G3. The G3's tap to wake is formidable. It's the best implementation of tap to wake that I've ever used on any smartphone. But all too often I'll do the double tap, there's that little bit of a lag, I'll go to double tap again and it'll turn the screen on and then immediately off. But unequivocally, one of the things I am really excited to see represented in the G3 Vigor is how ubiquitous high-speed data is, even for entry-level and mid-range devices. The Qualcomm radio in here gets very good signal reception. It's maybe not quite as good as the radios built into a Nokia device or a Motorola, but I've had pretty good reception just about anywhere I've had AT&T LTE service. And I just love that people shopping the mid-range and the entry-level are no longer punished with having slower data connections or crummier looking phones. Smartphones, even at the entry level and mid-range, are mission critical communication devices for most people. This might be your primary computing device. And I'm really happy to see that companies like LG and AT&T are looking at those types of usage needs and aren't punishing people that can't spend $500, $600, $700, $800 on a smartphone. So there aren't a lot of surprises here, and I still, for the most part, have some reservations about mid-range phones. It's that pricing in a competitive market which puts us into sticky territory on the G3 Vigor. Stepping up to a $400 phone, you can pick up this rugged, fantastic, super hardcore outdoor activity phone like the Kyocera Brigadier. Now, we're talking a $70 price difference between these two phones, but I would almost be willing to make the argument that sapphire glass on the front is probably worth it. Or if you're looking for something a little cheaper than the G3 Vigor, you can actually pick up a phone like the Lumia 1320. Go a little more phablet-y, but specs that line up really well against the Vigor here, and this phone's gonna run unlocked at around $280, just under $300. I wouldn't count out the competition from LG's own stable, where you would factor in the price of a G3 Vigor and say a 32 GB memory card. You could probably pick up an LG G2, roughly a $40 or $50 price difference. Plus, I wouldn't count out what might be coming down the pipe with a future Nexus device. Being able to land a premier cutting-edge flagship smartphone experience for probably around $400. So I don't mean to pan the G3 Vigor. I do think there is an audience for this phone, someone who's looking for an uncomplicated, very nice experience that can cover the basics and isn't wanting to spend a lot of money. I mean, it's gonna be free on the next program, obviously. It's gonna be $50 on a 2-year contract. Or if you just wanna buy it outright, $334. That's not a lot of money to buy a nice smartphone. But having used the G3 Vigor for a week, it really does illustrate just how ridiculously competitive this mid-range is becoming. Just getting squished further and further down by entry-level phones that do a really good job of tackling the basics and premier smartphones, which devalue really quickly. While this offers up a good bang for buck, it doesn't get an immediate go out and buy it recommendation. I really want you to shop what features are going to be most important for you in your smartphone purchase, and I think this phone can fulfill a lot of those usage requirements. You just really want to be savvy about how you throw your cash around. As always, folks, thanks so much for watching my videos, subscribing to my channel, dropping me those amazing comments down below my videos, sharing my videos. You guys have been phenomenal in raising discussion out on social media, social networking. I can't thank you enough for how you share my videos because it's been so much fun sharing all of this tech goodness with you fine folks. Hit that thumbs up button, and I will catch you all on the next review.